Hello.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our new five webinar series on treating anxiety and depression with Shiatsu and TCM and clean language. Yes, thanks so much for taking the time to tune in. Please say hi on the chat. It's lovely to see some many familiar names. I think it's about time that we showed the first slide. Here we've got a packed program for you as usual today, and Dinah's going to be with me because she's Dinah and myself are going to be taking some of the later webinars, leading some of them, presenting them, and I'll just explain what's going to be happening. So here we are. Look, it's treating anxiety and depression in the time of COVID. It's a really important subject, as you're probably aware. We're going to find out all kinds of things tonight about you as therapists, and also just kind of outline. We're going to kind of give you an overview and an introduction to some of the resources and presenters that we've got lined up for you in the next 5 weeks. So here we go. So here's the program. I'm going to introduce the series, give you an outline of what's happening in all of the 5 weeks, give you a little bit of an introduction to the presenters, just in case you haven't met them before. Then I thought it'd be really good to tune into ourselves a bit and just reflect a bit on how we're actually coping, because I know a lot of us who work with Shiatsu, I'm sure a lot of us in the webinar group are going to be experiencing quite a lot of stress, and we're dealing with a lot of clients who've got various emotional symptoms. So let's just check and see how we are. I'd also like to share some of the insights of Polyvagal Theory. I've got a little video for you of Stephen Porges. And then we'll look at the essential aspects of TCM that will set us up for the next 5 weeks. Okay, so first of all, let's find out a little bit about you immediately. I just want to find out whether your Shiatsu work with your clients is more challenging than before the time of COVID. Just thinking back to a couple of years ago, your average week, and think about what we're treating now. Do you think it's a lot more challenging, a little bit more challenging, or do you think it's about the same? I'm going to run the poll for you. So here we go. Let's just find out from you. Okay, and if it's the same, then obviously just don't vote. Okay. Okay, so we've got quite a lot of people finding it more or a lot more challenging than before COVID. So, and I think that's probably understandable. Just referring back to the previous course that we ran a few weeks ago, we looked at long COVID, and we looked at the different symptoms that are prevalent after COVID, after the COVID infection is finished. And look, anxiety and depression is right at the top there, and so that's one of the reasons why we thought we'd run this webinar series to help us treat them, treat those clients. Okay, so this is what we've got in store for you. This is the introduction, obviously, 16th of November, Shiatsu TCM Polyvagal Theory. And then next week, I'm not going to be here, actually. Shakura is going to be hosting the session with Malika, who was the star of our long COVID webinar series. And she's going to come in, very kindly offered to come in and look at it from a TCM perspective, the way that COVID symptoms can cause anxiety and depression from an energetic point of view. And then we've got Nick Pohl and Margot Rossi. They are both international presenters in clean language and mindful movement. And they're going to do a whole session on how we can use clean language, mindful movement and metaphors to help when we're working with the clients. So look forward to that. And then the last two, Dinah and I are going to go deeper into the whole Shiatsu and TCM theory and practice. And we're going to have a lot of practical exercises for you, show you the basic theory behind anxiety and depression in terms of TCM and Shiatsu theory, and then go into points, treatment, methods, and all that kind of thing. So pretty packed 5 weeks ahead. I hope you can make all of them, and we're going to look forward to seeing you on the webinars. Okay, so here's a little introduction. If you've been to our webinar series on the summer, or you've been to some of the ISCO International Shiatsu Congresses online that we've done, then you'll be familiar with Nick Paul and Margot Rossi. They're a great duo. They work really well together. Nick is an international authority on clean language. He's written a book, Words That Touch, which you may have seen, which is a fantastic book on somatic, using language with somatic bodywork. And Margot is an acupuncturist, and she's also into Dao Yin and various other movement practices, and they work really well together. So that would be something really not to miss. So just wondered, how do you feel you would rate your understanding of clean language? So let's just have a look. I'm going to run the poll just so that Nick and Mark have got an idea of how much background you've got of clean language using it with your Shiatsu practice. So would you say you're expert, good, little, or you know nothing about it? Okay, and I'm going to feed this back to Nick and Margot so that they'll know. We've got one person who's an expert. It might be Nick. I don't know if he's on the webinar. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so actually, look, they've got a lot of scope there because well over half of you know little or none about clean language. I really recommend it. It's fantastic work, and particularly when you start working with emotional issues. And then we've got Malika in week 2. That's next week. I'd like to introduce her. If you haven't seen her in the long COVID webinars, then really she's an expert on treating COVID. She's also a Chinese herbalist. She's also had COVID a couple of times. She's used Shiatsu techniques to help herself. So she's really lived the whole thing. And she's going to go deeper into the actual energetics behind how the COVID infection, vaccinations, long COVID, and that can actually affect the energy body. So that's going to be really useful background. As I say, I really don't miss that. I wouldn't want to miss that. Okay, so let's just find out for Malika's benefit and for ours, like what is your please rate your understanding of TCM. And we've got, expert, good, little, or none. So let's find out how your TCM is. Which might be being very modest, of course, Dinah. They might just being very modest.
Absolutely. We've got an expert.
Yeah, we've got a few experts, and we've got no one who's figured out none, which is kind of reassuring. And look, actually, that's pretty good. So I think Malika's going quite high with her webinar there, because well over half of you rate your knowledge of TCM as good. So that's really cool. Okay, and then there's me and Dinah. Yeah, so basically we're going to be doing the last 2 webinars, and we're going to be going deeper into the TCM and the Shiatsu, using our experience of Shiatsu, and also combining it with Polyvagal Theory, which is one of my own enthusiasms. And I've just talking to Dinah, just saying that I've been actually doing my homework. Look at this, the Psyche in Chinese Medicine by Giovanni Machocha. Okay, we have read this book, people, so you don't have to, because it's a bit of a long read. So we're going to present it in a really easy way that you can directly put it into your Shiatsu, and we're going to be working from the practicalities of it, a bit like we did with the long COVID webinars. You know, looking what you're going to feel, what does it mean, what can you do, points and techniques and stuff like that. So hopefully that will be really useful, directly useful. Okay, so I thought it might be worth just thinking about how we are actually coping, and there's reasons for that as well, which we'll find out later when we have a look at polyvagal theory. I've got some polls here, a little string of polls actually, so just sort of be interesting as a group to find out just how we are actually coping ourselves, and as I say, that's an important thing. So let's find out, have you suffered from either anxiety or depression at any level during COVID, since COVID started? Yes or no? Let's just see if I can find that poll. Right, okay. Yes, okay, so have you yourself, not your clients, but you yourself suffered from either anxiety or depression during COVID? Let's see how many of us have escaped. And we're going to find out why that's such a likely thing to happen later on when we look at polyvagal theory. And I've got a nice video from Stephen Porges about that. Okay, so look, this is very interesting, isn't it? We've got like about 2/3 of us have actually suffered from anxiety or depression during COVID. Okay, so let's go a little bit deeper into that with some more polls. Okay, so if you have suffered from anxiety or maybe you suffered it during lockdown and you're okay now, or how severe was it? Was it very severe, severe, mild, or very mild? Just to get an idea of just how serious it was. So let's just run that poll. Okay, so if you have suffered from anxiety, if you haven't, then you obviously don't have to vote. But let's see whether it was very severe, severe, or mild are the options there. Okay, so most of you escaped with fairly mild thing, although some of us look something like 20% severe or very severe. Okay, so that's pretty significant, I think. And what about depression? If you actually felt more like a depressive type of feeling, how severe was that? And let's see whether I've got the options on that poll. Okay, yeah, so very severe, severe, mild, or very mild. It should show up. Let's see if that, yes, it does. Okay, so if you suffered from depression, how severe was it? Very severe, severe, mild, or very mild? Okay, now look at this. You see, we've got most of you managed to escape with mild or very mild depression, but we've got a significant number, about 1 in 5 of us, who suffer from depression as marking it up as severe or very severe. And that's very significant because as therapists, obviously, we need to kind of look after ourselves first and foremost. But obviously, we're all human. I mean, I don't know how you felt, Dinah, but I mean, I actually found that I've actually found that I've had to deal with more anxiety towards the end of it. So I think when COVID really started, when the lockdowns were on, we were so busy. We were in that sort of adrenal state, that fight and flight state, and we were just working so hard to do things, support things, and there was so much structure there. And I think personally, I found that when we started to come out of it and some normality came back, there was a lot of fatigue there, and it was like an ongoing stress. I don't know how you felt it.
Well, I'm interested. Oh, I've got a bit of echo. Sorry about that.
It's all right. I'll turn my point down a bit. Yeah, okay.
What I was thinking, I've been very lucky actually, because as you say, at the beginning of lockdown, we were in overdrive really at the Shiatsu Center, trying to produce different ways of supporting practitioners, clients, and our client, everybody, teachers, taking our work online, doing distant treatments. We were flat out, really, weren't we?
Yeah.
And I feel a bit blessed, really, that I haven't been personally affected much in terms of anxiety and depression, but I'm interested by how many people have been, and I'm thinking that as practitioners, we do an awful lot of work on increasing our sensitivity. And basically the key field in our country, and I'm sure in many others, has been so thick buzzing with anxiety. So many people full of fear, so many people full of anxiety and depression, that as sensitized practitioners, oh, you've gone, Cliff, that we are, it's not surprising that we're picking up on that. And I think that that's been quite clear through a lot of the work that we've done with practitioners and teachers over these months, that many of them have felt that they're picking up from the wider key field. Oh, here he is, he's back. Oh, but no sound, Cliff. You've got no sound. Oh, there you are.
Yeah, that's one of the I mean, I think that's one of the valuable things we did with setting up the Wednesday class. We've had a lot of practitioners on that. We've had clients, but we've had a lot of practitioners as well coming every Wednesday, you know, in order to work on their own their own energies. So, and that's really helped me. I must say, I love those Wednesday classes. It's a time to check in and everything. And I have to say, I am coming out of it now, but I did have a period. I mean, I had a lot of big life changes as well, like moving house and, you know, all that kind of thing, and big, massive readjustments. And I think some of it was fatigue as well. I am coming out of it now, but I definitely had a period where I really hit a low there as things started to come back more to normal, you know, trying to readjust there. So, you know, we're not alone. It's a very, very common thing to feel that.
Yeah, and Fran is saying in the chat, periods where she felt the sense of anxiety in the key field. And I think even if we weren't necessarily conscious of it, an awful lot of us were picking it up.
Yeah.
You could walk through the streets, couldn't you, and feel it.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
So many of our clients working with poorly people, bereaved, you know, loss. It's been a pretty intense period.
Definitely.
And certainly in the therapeutic setting,
absolutely,
that issue of stress and anxiety generally for our clients has been pretty widespread.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so moving on, let's have a little look at polyvagal theory. And I really love polyvagal theory. And I think I've got a poll probably. I've got 10 polls today. It's a real poll heavy thing. Yeah, let's find out, how would you rate your understanding of polyvagal theory? Let's see if I put all of the options in properly this time. I've got expert, good, neutral, and none. Okay, so I'm going to share that with you. Let's just see, how would you rate your understanding of polyvagal theory? Oh, we've got a few experts. Hey, well, look, that's interesting. We'd just like to vote. Thank you very much. That's brilliant. Okay, what have we got? We've got 68% saying neutral or none. So there's quite a lot of scope there for exploring polyvagal theory. So let's have a little look at it. The thing I like about polyvagal theory, and I'll explain a little bit more about how it can work so well with Shiatsu, is it connects the mind and body together via the autonomic nervous system. So it's really good mind-body thing. It links very closely with Shiatsu and TCM via the concept of ki, and I can explain that later on when we go deeper into it. It's part of a new paradigm in Western thought, which really emphasizes the link between somatics, the body, and emotional states, which is obviously really close to Chinese medicine. It even links the emotions to the organs through the vagal nerve system. So we've got a feedback loop there between the organ system itself and how we're experiencing safety and our emotional states. So that's right in our zone as somatic body workers. And the thing I really like about it is it can explain some of the DCM connections with the neurophysiology. So we've got a kind of Western explanation of why what we're doing is so effective on the emotional level. And I've got a video clip for you. So I think, Dinah, if we just leave the stage so that we don't get any echo, I'm going to just take you off there. I'm going to take myself off the stage, and I'm going to play a video of Stephen Porges himself describing what polyvagal theory is. And once we've seen the video, I want you to just reflect a little bit on how that really is relevant for us as therapists. So check this out. I'm just going to leave the stage and just wait for a few seconds.
Our nervous system is functionally a triangle upside down, okay, with a point. This is the brainstem. I'm talking about the circuits that are being regulated in the brainstem that regulate our underlying state, percolate information up to the brainstem, and the brainstem, it literally is transmitting that information to higher brain structures, enabling access to different brain areas. So that when we're in safe states, we can access higher cortical functions, but when we're in dangerous states, those systems turn off and we're defensive. If we think of this triangle, and each time we get higher and higher, we have greater diversity of expression and outcome. So I'm talking about basically 3 states that provide a neural platform for great diversity of expression. If you are in a constant dangerous environment, your nervous system is going to find it difficult to detect safety. So if it can't detect safety, it's going to be in the state of more fight, flight, a low threshold to react, And when you're in that state, you're going to misread other people's cues. So you're more likely to see neutral faces as being aggressive. You're more likely to see fearful faces as if they were angry. So you can really confound difficult relationships. So you won't be able to use people to self-regulate. They'll become threatening and reactive. So if you have a history in which there is no experiences of using people to regulate in a very pro-social positive way, people will then become threatening or damaging to you. And what I always want to emphasize is that the social interactional behavior is a neural exercise. It's a neural exercise of using newer mammalian structures, in a sense evolutionary newer structures, to inhibit very primitive defensive systems. So if we feel that we're in safe environments, we'll use our face, we'll use the intonation of our voice, and we'll negotiate a relationship or maintain safety by doing that. And this is what friends do, this is what lovers do, this is what supposedly teachers are supposed to do and therapists, right? If we're a little bit in a more dangerous situation, like a novel environment, we don't know anything about it, we'll go into another physiological state that will support fight or flight mobilization behaviors. And if we can fight or flee, get away from something, then we've actually negotiated that danger. But what if we can't get away from the danger? What if we're held down or we're in a confined environment? What if we're trapped in a car or a plane or in a bathroom and someone is now going to hurt us? The possibility is that we could trigger a third circuit which shuts us down. And it's that shutdown circuit that makes it so important in understanding trauma. And the Polyvagal Theory articulates that shutdown circuit, while most other theoretical models of trauma and what people would call stress disorders only talk about a fight-flight system. Okay, so that's the core of what I would tell a person about the Polyvagal Theory. And the second component of that core is that these responses are not voluntary. Our nervous system is picking up information in the environment and evaluating that information, not on a cognitive level, but on a subconscious, we want to bring back that term, but on a neurobiological level where we're picking up features of risk or danger. And our nervous system puts us into those different states. And we can become aware of that because when we're in certain environments, we may feel our heart pounding. And we may ask the question, why is my heart pounding? And then you'll say, well, something in the environment must have triggered it. But often we don't know the cues that trigger these things. So the point I want to make is first that the Polyvagal Theory provides us with an understanding of three neural circuits that support different types of behavior. One is social engagement behaviors in safe environments. The other is fight, flight, and mobilization behaviors. And the third one is really a shutting down, a second level of defense.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that. There's a lot of information in that video, and I'm going to go over some of it. I've got some charts and everything to kind of explain that. So let's just share the materials. You notice he mentioned teachers and therapists there as providing a safe space. Teachers and therapists, he said it just under his breath there, friends and lovers and teachers and therapists. And that's one of the reasons why it's really important for us to be able to work on ourselves, because the thing is it's essential when we're working with anxiety and depression that we can create a safe space, and we do that through modeling. So by looking after ourselves, we can create an environment where the client is going to feel safe, they're going to feel that communication. But I've got a reflection. If you remember what he was saying there about how we pick up these triggers, and there's like 3 different states, and I've got a chart for you in a minute to have a look at that. But I was just thinking it might be worth reflecting, and maybe you'd like to put that in the chat there, and maybe Dinah, you can have a look at and see what comes in there. Because thinking about that video, thinking about all those things that he said, you know, like being able to use the face, the whole face, in order to communicate, to provide social interaction. Social interaction for mammals is one of the core ways that we self-regulate the nervous system. And if you think about lockdown, you think about masks, you think about the ever-present threat that we're told about, that, you know, that you can catch COVID at any time if you're in a crowd and stuff like that. all of those things are guaranteed to affect our nervous system and basically escalate our nervous system up into a threatened state. It's absolutely guaranteed. And unless we do something positive, like mindfulness, meditation, breathing, yoga, shiatsu exercises, or have shiatsu, unless we do something, it's a natural state to be activated in that way. And also notice also that he also mentioned what happens if we're trapped. If we're actually trapped and we can't get away from that, then we're going to go into the third state. And I've got a chart I'm going to show you in a moment. So you may be familiar with the whole sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system. Basically, you've got the sympathetic nervous system, fight and flight, and the parasympathetic system that calms everything down. But what polyvagal theory does is it's more sophisticated than that, because basically there's two branches of the parasympathetic nervous system. There's the mammalian vagus, which is the ventral vagus system, which is the one he was talking about, that provides that moderating the nervous system through social interaction. And there's also a deeper, evolutionarily deeper state of dorsal vagus, which is the reptilian vagus, and that is our final defense from the nervous system. So what will happen is that if we are trapped, we can't escape the threat, then we tend to go into shutdown. And here's a great chart, one of my favorite charts. I use this a lot with my clients, and it clearly shows these three states that he was talking about. So we've got the green area at the bottom. That's where there's social engagement. That's what we rely on as mammals to give us a sense of safety. It gives us a feeling of joy, being in the present, being grounded, curious and open, mindful and compassionate. And it's a sense of safety that we get from being surrounded by people in a social setting. So you can imagine that with lockdown and with the whole environment of the coronavirus, that's going to be really compromised. And the natural thing that happens when we are under threat, where, as he was saying, we pick up on a neurophysiological level that we are not in a safe space, then we naturally will go into this red zone, which is this sympathetic nervous system area. And you notice that anxiety, which is one of the themes of this webinar series, is right there in the middle there on the left there, along with worry and concern, fear and panic as it goes up through the red zone. Now, the thing is, of course, that red zone is really important because we rely on that in order for the fight and flight reflex. So we need that in a way to actually act in a threatening situation. But you can imagine that the challenges with lockdown is there's not very much you can do. I mean, I suppose one of the things, like Dinah was saying, one of the things that we did was we channeled all our energy, we channeled all of that sympathetic nervous system energy into creating a whole series of webinars. We created 26 webinars in a month in 6 different languages. You know, we were focusing it in on that. But if you're not lucky enough to be able to be in a social environment, we had a nice team, we worked together. If you're more isolated, like some of your clients will be, maybe you were, then what can happen is you can get that feeling of being trapped and not being able to act. And that's what he was talking about when he talked about the third level, which is this blue zone here. And the blue zone is when we start going into the depressed state. We get overwhelmed and we start to get dissociated. We get a feeling of numbness, helplessness, and a natural feeling of depression. And that can lead to a feeling of shame. And that's one of the reasons why I particularly love this chart, because it shows, I've used this so many times with clients, to show them that it's nothing to be ashamed of. This feeling is, as Stephen was saying in the video, it's an involuntary nervous system reaction to not being able to run or to fight, and not being able to get away from that threat. And so because of the way we've been programmed, humans are programmed, because we prefer to be in the green zone, there's often that sense of shame and hopelessness in that blue zone. So the reason I really like this chart, it's very, very helpful to explain to clients what's happening, why they're in the state, why it's just their body trying to look after themselves. You know, the nervous system is really trying to help them, and that's a really, really positive thing. Have you got anything to add to that then, Dinah?
About the whole social engagement thing, which, as you say, we were lucky because we were working together as a team, blah, blah, blah. But, there were an awful lot of our clients who, because of lockdown, were actually more isolated, and therefore their social engagement was hugely reduced, as well as the sense of panic and anxiety in all the forms of media and in the air. So things like, when we look at polyvagal theory in more detail later, you know, use of the face, you know, eating together, smiling together, looking in each other's eyes, all of those things that help us regulate our system and feel at ease, were lost to people who are stuck at home alone, being bombarded with fearful news. So of course we moved to the fight and flight. But
even then when you could go out, everyone was wearing masks anyway, which again reduces that interaction, that facial interaction, you know.
But of course, if you've got certain emotional vulnerabilities anyway, there can be a way in which people feel safer when they are shut away or covered up. And there are some people that it was helpful for, you know. So it's there's many layers to it all, is what I'm interested to notice. But I think it's really useful for people to, as you say, to share that chart with people. And by the way, I'm sure it will be a download at some point, if not tonight, so that people who haven't seen it can have it. But I always remember the, what's his name, not Stephen Porges, but Peter Levine, talking about the antelope in the savannah being chased by the lion. You know, first of all, it's fight and flight. It runs, you know, first hanging out with its fellows, munching happily in the group, and they're in the happy green zone. Then comes the lion and it's fight and flight, and they're running and the heart's racing and all of that and all of that. But then the lion leaps. And at that stage, it's like, oh my God, I'm a goner. And at that point, it's like you play dead.
Yeah.
Shut down. And if you're lucky, the lion gets distracted and goes off, and you can get up and have a good old shake and go back to your tribe, I want to say. What do I mean? Back to the herd, exactly. But so it's technically it's the reptilian brain, but actually it's that primal protective mechanism. Not great for humans, but it's useful to recognize that it is an inbuilt protection system.
Yeah.
So and very encouraging for people. Yes, shaking the body cures 1,000 diseases.
Okay, let's go a little bit deeper into it. So here's the ventral vagal nerve, and what it does is it basically connects. I find this very interesting with the link with Chinese medicine, because it allows the connection between the heart, the actual physical heart rate, and Stephen mentioned that in the video. You know, the heart rate suddenly increases. You're not quite sure why, because your nervous system has picked up something. So the ventral vagal system regulates the heartbeat, and it basically is to do with mammalian safety. So if you're around in a social situation, you're trusting that group to look out for danger for you. And it's also involved in love, joy and excitement. So that's what it looks like, that's where it goes. And there's actually other branches, cranial nerves, that go up into the face and are to do with eating and listening and things like that. We can go into in more detail later on. Okay, the dorsal vagal nerve, and I find this very interesting as well. It mainly affects subdiaphragmatic zone, so it's down in basically the hara. Okay, what it does is it tends to shut down and freeze and shut down body systems when you're in an extreme threat situation. It affects the digestive organs, and it also gives us an idea, a neurophysiological connection between the hara and the emotional states. So that's the two vagal nerve systems. Okay, so what I like to do now is I'd like to do an exercise. Okay, I'm going to do a breathing exercise. and I've got my pen and paper here, just so I can, whoops. I've got my pen and paper. We're going to, you just follow the exercise. And I've got a poll to see what the results are. What we're going to do is we're going to experiment with the breath, and I'll explain why afterwards, and how that fits in with polyvagal theory, and also it's how it's a very practical thing to help with your clients. But we're going to do is a very simple breathing exercise. So if you want to just follow me,
stage briefly.
Yeah, I'll just pop down off so I'm center stage. Okay, you might want to close your eyes when you do it. I'm going to just make a note of how I feel. Very simple exercise. What we're going to do is we're going to tune into our breath, and then we're going to emphasize the in-breath, okay, which is unusual. Normally we're emphasizing the out-breath, and we'll find out why in a minute. But what we're going to do is we're going to contrast emphasizing the in-breath, and then we're going to take a little break, and then we're going to emphasize the out-breath. We're just going to breathe a few times just to get into the feeling, and then we're going to reflect back and see if we can feel a change in our energy system with the two breathing systems. And in order to emphasize the breath, why don't we make a sound as we inhale and exhale, just to make it more clear. So we're going to start off by emphasizing the inhalation. So we're going to take a long inhalation, we're going to make a sound, and then we're just going to breathe out. So it's going to be inhalation, okay, and then we're going to breathe out, okay, and we'll just see what happens to our energy system, how we're feeling on all different levels. You ready to go? Okay, so I'm going to just close my eyes for a second. I'm going to relax, and maybe you'd like to do the same. Just close your eyes, tune into your breath. Okay, and now let's emphasize the in-breath, and we're going to make a sound, so I'm going to go like this. And then breathe out. Okay, you can breathe in through your nose or your mouth. I'm going to breathe in through my nose, so I'm going to do this. Okay, we can do either. Okay, but let's just do that for a few breaths, breathing in. And then relax. Okay, emphasizing the in-breath. A few more. Okay, now just monitor how you're feeling, how your alertness feels, generally how you're feeling your whole energy system. Let's just do two more. Long inhale breath, emphasizing the in-breath. Okay, got it. So let's just relax. I'm just going to make a few notes about what it was like. What effect did that have? We're going to contrast it now with doing what we tend to do when we do breathing exercises, which is emphasize the exhalation. Okay, so just follow me. I'm going to close my eyes again. Okay, so we're just going to take an in breath, and then got it? Okay, in breath. Very different, isn't it? Okay, let's do a few more. Breathing in, breathing out. Okay, breathing in and breathing out. Okay, now just relax. Let's just reflect back on what happened and whether you could feel a difference between when we're emphasizing the inhalation and the exhalation. And I think I've got a poll for that. It's a poll, very poll heavy webinar today. Oh yeah, here we go. So just reflecting back let me just put the slides up. I'm pretty sure I've got the slides. Yeah, there we are. Okay. Yeah, so here's the poll and break. Did you feel a difference in the effect of the two breathing patterns? Let's just find out, first of all, whether you felt a difference. Just simply yes or no, I'm not sure. Here we go. So let's see. Thinking back to how you felt when we emphasized the inhalation and the exhalation. So we're getting a pretty substantial yes there. Okay. So now the question is what was going on there? Now you notice that normally when we do breathing exercises like relaxation exercises, we tend to emphasize the out breath. Okay. The reason for that is because the breath, the in-breath and the out-breath, are related to two aspects of the nervous system. So basically, the in-breath is connected to the sympathetic nervous system, and the out-breath is connected to the parasympathetic nervous system. So basically, what that means is that if we emphasize the in-breath, you'll tend to feel your arousal level going up. You'll tend to feel yourself more aware, more kind of awake and more active. And that's because it will tend to take you from the green zone up into the red zone if you want to become more kind of active and aware. Now, what we normally do with breathing exercise, and I'm sure you must have recommended these to your clients many, many times, is you tend to emphasize the out breath. And the reason for that is because normally in a stress state, the client is going to be in the red zone, sympathetic nervous system. And what that does is it deactivates them out of the sympathetic nervous system and into the green zone, into the ventral vagal. So as you breathe out, the longer you hold the out breath, the more calming it is and the kind of more relaxing it is, and the more it deactivates you from the red zone. Now, the thing is, the interesting thing about polyvagal theory, and I've used this successfully with many clients, is that once the person starts going into the blue zone, you don't really want to be emphasizing the parasympathetic nervous system anymore, because you don't want them to be becoming even more solidly stuck in the blue zone. So actually, paradoxically, as part of the deactivation process, it's a good idea to get them to emphasize the in-breath, because that will tend to pull them down, deactivate them into the red zone. Once they're in the red zone, then we can elongate the out breath and get them back down, hopefully, into the green zone. So that's a very practical application of polyvagal theory in something very simple, which is literally using the breath with our clients to control their own nervous system. Yeah, it's a very effective one. That's one of the other things why I really love the theory. So here we go. I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat and see how everyone did with that.
I noticed that Karen Elisa said that she found emphasizing the in-breath was more energizing.
Yes,
that's it. Corroborates what you said. I'll tell you what came to me while I was doing that part one was the Masanaga expression for kidney and bladder, that get ready to run.
Yes.
Here we go. It's got that feeling, hasn't it? It's like loads more energy.
Yes.
And you can see, therefore, why it's helpful to encourage clients really stuck in the blue zone.
Yeah.
They can't just straight jump down to the green, but they drop down into the red by getting a bit more breath, getting a bit more of that yang qi, basically.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
System, and so that they can get up and run away from the danger.
Yes, absolutely. That's what you were trying to do. Yeah, absolutely. And I've found that's been so helpful for clients. It's so simple, but very, very helpful. Okay, so time is flying past, as it always does with these webinars. Hope you're enjoying it and finding it useful. And so now we come to the final section, which is where Dinah and I will be working with Shiatsu and TCM. And so let's just have a little quick look at some of this. Okay, right, here we go. Let's find out how confident you are at treating anxiety and depression with Shiatsu and TCM. Let's make sure that I've got the poll sorted out properly. Let's have a look.
While you're doing that, I just Rosemary's just said that the out breath made her more aware of her hara and center, and actually that was the thing that was very clear to me as well when I was doing it. Is you really drop down, don't you? You really drop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Focuses on the out breath. So that's it was like up or down.
Yeah,
very clear.
And actually, when we start getting into some of the more sophisticated TCM interactions, there's lots of stuff that interactive between the lungs and the kidneys and the liver and everything. Okay, so I'm going to just run this poll now and just see how confident you are right now, and hopefully we can increase your confidence over the next 5 webinars. Because I think the thing is, I'm sure you'll agree with me, Dinah, I think Shiatsu's got a fantastic role to play in helping with emotional problems, obviously, and stress and emotional problems. So
really brilliant, and we're so lucky to have it as our modality, because it, of course, we're addressing all levels, physical, emotional, psychological, but for things like anxiety, you know, the space, I mean, I was thinking of some of my clients who say, oh God, I feel better just being in your room.
Yeah,
you
sure.
know, that thing of, and what you were talking about before about modeling and how important it is to regulate our own systems so that we can radiate a calm key field for them to be in. And half of our work, not half, a deal of our work is already done by that, by setting up the key field in the space, and absolutely, by our calm, compassionate, loving interaction with our client.
And also a sense of safety that is transmitted through the touch.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it, love it. We're so lucky.
Okay, here we go. Over half of you said you were very confident or confident. So there's only half of you who feel neutral, unconfident, or very unconfident. So we've pretty well matched. Okay, so here's a little something to think about. Which element do you think is the most central in relating to anxiety and depression when we're treating it? Water, wood, fire, earth, and metal. All of them are involved, as we'll find out in the next 5 weeks. Which one do you think is the most central? I'll just make sure that I've got all of the elements there. Wood, fire, earth, and metal. Yeah. Okay, let's find out what everyone thinks. Interesting. Okay, if you just like to vote, we better make sure we get plenty of people voting. I'd be interested whether you actually agree with me, Dinah. But look at this, water's come out way ahead.
Yep.
Probably because of the relationship with the nervous system.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, thank you for voting. So water came out, fire came out second. Oh, that's 18%.
It's a big...
Okay, interesting. Well, certainly from a nervous system point of view, you're absolutely right there.
Yeah.
But really, from a Chinese medicine point of view, if you're looking at at the most central aspect for any emotional state, it has to be the heart, because the heart is related to the Shen. So you may not agree with me, that's fine. But really the fire element is always going to be affected because it's the representation of the mind and the spirit. I have to say that obviously all of the organs, particularly the water element, and in fact the fire-water connection is probably one of the most central axes with stress and trauma especially. But the Shen in the fire element has a central role because it's always going to be reflected through that on the emotional level, because the Shen is related to consciousness, and all emotional states affect the Shen. And of course, you're familiar with your TCM and your Shiatsu theory. Each of the organs are related to different aspects of the emotions. And there are all kinds of interactions that we'll be looking at in great detail. And again, going back to some of the heavy-duty TCM that you've got books like this, you'll find there are a lot of sophistication there. But we're going to take a very practical approach, and we'll show you the kind of things that are the most common aspects.
I think it's worth just stating, and of course we all have been taught in school, as you said, nervous system, especially ANS, the autonomic nervous system, in bladder. But remember that, and we all tend to, we've been taught depression is often related to the liver meridian, but it's the heart that allows us to feel all our emotions.
Yes.
It's that consciousness of. So yes, will to live, Karen says. Absolutely. I mean, they're all involved, aren't they?
Of course they are. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they are. They're all involved, and we'll find out in more detail, and we'll be working with points and all kinds of stuff. So here we go. Right, okay, so here we are, and it's what says on this slide. All the meridians and elements are associated with anxiety and depression in different ways, and we'll look at the spiritual aspects of the different organs, and also how they reflect and the different types of pathologies that we get, because obviously the person's constitution and their lifestyle are going to affect, and their predispositions are going to affect how anxiety and depression manifests. And I think that's a great strength of Chinese medicine, because we can differentiate in a quite a sophisticated way about how that's actually affecting individuals, and we can treat them appropriately.
Yep.
And the thing is, each meridian function is related to different aspects of anxiety and depression. As Dinah mentioned, you might think, okay, the spleen, worry, not the spleen, anxiety is related to the earth and so on, and liver key stagnation is obviously commonly related to depression. But actually, you can get depression and anxiety in all of the different meridians and different combinations as well. And there are specific combinations that are very common because of the way that the Zhang Fu work together. And we're going to be looking into that in webinar 4 and 5. So look forward to that, working with Dinah on that.
Yeah, and I was thinking about, if my client tells me I've had a panic attack, I immediately have to say, how did it manifest? And,
absolutely, yeah.
It's always different. Some of, yes, okay, they may have palpitations, but they may not have that at all. They may have an upset tummy, or, they're terribly sick and they've got sweaty palms, or whatever. Every individual will manifest slightly differently, as you say.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, okay. Now, the interesting thing, that I've, and this actually, if you have been following New Energy work for a while, you may have come across our stress and trauma course, and that was, I think we did that about 2 years ago, Dinah. I think it was now maybe 3 years ago, I think we did that course. That was when we were doing a lot of research into stress and trauma, and that's when we started to really start investigate the interaction between polyvagal theory and Shiatsu and TCM. Yeah. And the thing that I find really quite exciting about it is that it works so well together, because although some meridians are more associated with anxiety, for example, with the spleen, and others more with depression, like the liver, what I feel from my own experience is that it's not so much what tips it from anxiety into depression is more to do with whether the client is going from the red zone and into the blue zone, because anxiety is a natural state and it's involved in the sympathetic nervous system response. But the thing is, once you start going into the blue zone there, that's when the depression starts to, when the shutdown starts to happen, the depressive state starts to become dominant. And being able to map the meridian functions in those 3 states, because obviously there's a positive state, as we know, love, compassion, free flowing of energy, we've got something to aim for there in the green zone. That represents basically the meridians in a positive relationship and in a positive state of movement. And then if we map that into the red zone and the blue zone, we've got a really, really very simple and very practical model that can affect the diagnosis that we have. And also it really can affect how we work on a practical level, because basically, are we unfreezing them, or are we deregulating them and calming them into the green zone? And that makes a big difference when we come to the actual practical application of body work. And so that's why I find it such an exciting interaction between modern neurophysiology and traditional Chinese medicine. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing in webinar 4 and 5. We're going to be having an in-depth exploration of how the meridians express in the green, red, and the blue zones, and how we can actually treat our Shiatsu clients, including the use of TCM understanding and points. So we'll be looking at points that regulate the meridians specifically in emotional states. Okay, fantastic. So,
yes. In fact,
just quickly to
she's pointed out we can work the meridians and the points in very different ways.
Absolutely, yeah, we can. Exactly. Use the same points to do both things, because most of the points are homeostatic. We're looking at the actions of the points. So just a quick review. So this is week 1. Thank you very much for staying with us. We've covered basically the overview, looked at Shiatsu TCM Polyvagal Theory. I've introduced the presenters. Next week, check in with Malika, find out the dynamic between actual COVID infection, how it can affect the energy body. That'll be laying the foundation to the TCM. Week 3, clean language and mindful movement and metaphors with Nick and Margot. And then treating anxiety theory and practice. And we're going to divide it into 2. So we're going to be doing the anxiety level stuff on week 4, and then we'll be looking more at the blue zone depression in week 5. That's how we've kind of mapped it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so just a little little bit of background. You might be wondering how we're still here, how we've managed to it, and I tell you what, it has been pretty stressful in itself sometimes as we're coming out of COVID, because we managed to amass over 2,500 free members. In fact, we've got about 2,650 now. Now, the only problem with that is that every single free member does increase our costs. So our costs have gone up. We've managed to get through COVID fine, because we had around 500 donors who kept us going through COVID, which is great. But now we're moving more to a subscribing membership now, because we're looking to the long term. We're looking to the long-term survival, and we've already got 70 professional premium subscribing members, many of whom will be tuning into this webinar right now. And a massive thank you to you for supporting us. But if you would like to join the professional or premium memberships and get extra benefits, the thing we're doing now, because we've got such big numbers, is we can offer a lot for very, very low, amount per month. So if you just gave us €10 a month, it would make our lives a lot more relaxing and take us out of that red zone into the green zone. We would love that. And we're going to make sure we look after you if you do that. Don't worry about that, because we're doing lots of extra things for the subscribing members moving forwards. And if you were one of those 500 donators that's got us through COVID, a massive thank you. It really did make all the difference as our costs escalated as it went on. It's been a wonderful experience working with you all and everything. And we've come out much stronger, I think, as a result of it, which has been a really wonderful thing. Okay, you want to find out how to become a member? Go on to New Energy Work and press that button, the memberships, and I'll tell you all about it. As simple as that. Okay, so that's the end of the webinar. I just want to say a massive thank you, Dinah, to being with me. And I'm really looking forward to working with you on the 4th and 5th webinar. And lots of hearts going on to the chat. Thank you very much. I'm going to put a heart on there. And yeah, really looking forward to the next 4 weeks.
I want to read, there's a long post from Biggie that I didn't see it though. It went so fast, this chat.
Yes, I've got it here. Yeah, here we go. I mark it up as a question. Look, here we go.
Yeah, let's have a look. Let's share it, because that's interesting.
Oops, I marked it up and answered it. She said that every time anxiety shows and needs different treatment. Some days ago, I had a client in a really freeze state because he accompanied his girlfriend with a first epileptic attack, and my shiatsu not really came through to him, but in the middle, I started to beat or clap his fire meridians and the body reacted. There we are, you see, out of the freeze state. Well done, Biggie. That's really, really good. And that's this kind of thing we'll be investigating at the end, in the last 2 of this webinar series. Okay, great. So yeah, there'll be lots of sharing and stuff to explore when we tune in with you. Okay, so see you next week. Make sure you check in next week for the session with Malika.
And Malika's wonderful. If you haven't met her, really recommend it.
Yeah,
also,
and will be here to be hosting her as well.
Yeah,
okay, have a great evening. Going to end the session. Thanks so much, Dinah.
Bye.
Okay, bye.